we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, you're a busy guy. I aspire to be not as busy as you, but have some of the experiences that you've had. I aspire to. So you're inspiring as a business owner, and some of the things you're doing, especially building an airplane, man. That's like my childhood dream was build an airplane. You're doing that now, so that's cool.
No,
I like getting the updates on that on your social media and seeing it in the studio.
Oh, I appreciate it. It's I don't know if it's smart to have all those experiences or if it's slight stupidity, but maybe it's a combination of both, but we learn from everything. So we're building an airplane in your building, in your business.
Yeah. We rented 2 spaces for our new school. I'm sure we'll talk about more here in the podcast, but yeah, we're not to capacity, so we had some space for you to come and rent a piece of it to have an airplane there, which is inspiring. Our school's about heroes.
Yeah.
And there's nothing more inspiring to a young STEM brain, especially someone who's into that kind of thing, than to see an airplane being built in the space where they get to go and work at school every day.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of kids don't get that kind of experience.
Yeah. Which, let's get into that. But first, let's just go back when we met. So your wife came to CrossFit and was talking with her a little bit, and she's like, you guys need to meet because, you just need to meet and know each other a little bit. And then we got talking about the Tesla conversion. And what do you do with EV?
Yeah, so I have been a car guy all growing up. Always fixed junky old cars. And then I became an electrical engineer. Always been fascinated with magnets and electric motors and how they work and what makes them brushless and the torque. Like all these things I nerded out about as a teenager. And then in college, I got a thing in my brain that was forcing me to, I don't know what the buzzing sound is.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Sure, it'll come and go.
I'll turn my phone off just in case it's that. I don't think it is.
No problem. So I got this bug in my brain that said, you got to convert a car to electric because that would be awesome. As an electrical engineering project, that would be awesome. So from about 2015 or so, that's all I researched. I became obsessed with classic car conversions to electric and was planning out projects. And trouble is budget when you're a college student is tough. So I never really got to start on it until I graduated. I went and worked for the Air Force in the newest ICBM, their newest nuclear weapon that's coming out. It's called the Sentinel.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I worked in the nuke weapons program. Learned some really cool stuff, mind-blowing stuff of what our country was capable of during the Cold War. Scientifically, and the engineers, the skill we had that we've totally lost because we don't invest in weapons anymore and space travel anymore. So, but to learn about the past nuclear weapons, I'm digressing. But so that was an interesting job, really cool. Wasn't quite satisfying to me, especially the area. So I tried hard to get a job back up here in Idaho so we could come back because we loved Rexburg. So got a job at Idaho National Lab as a systems engineer, still working with the Air Force with the nuke weapons program and with now the drone strike stuff. And I'd also help with some drones at Idaho National Lab. And I've been involved with some advanced nuclear grid integration, like renewable energy systems stuff. Although systems engineers are really broad. I didn't specialize. I generalized in engineering. So it's kind of weird. I've been involved with a lot of weird, cool stuff at INL. So, but one of my passions has been working on old cars and making them electric. So I started doing some of those now that I had an income here. Did one of my own and was planning a second one, and then talked to you, and you're like, I want something fast.
Yeah.
And cool, what can we do? And so I started shopping for parts for that, and we bought a Tesla. You sponsored a project, and we're building a sweet. We're not sure what we're building yet. A truck, probably.
Yeah.
But we have a Tesla Model Y that we've got running, and we're going to chop it all up and do a body swap on something.
Yeah. So we had that Ford F-100, which looks so cool. But if anyone's listening and has a early 70s Chevy, C10, right? That's probably the best fit. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that would fit the body better. A short bed especially would be awesome, which are harder to find. My first car was a 78
GMC truck. That was when I was 13. My dad let me buy one for $400.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it was mine.
Yeah.
And everything that broke was mine.
Cool.
So I got to fix everything, and that really is very Acton Academy style of taking responsibility for education. That was my education, was this junky old truck that I got to do donuts in the field as much as I want. And then,
What year was it?
It was 78.
Okay. My first truck was a 71 Chevy. So that is what will be kind of cool, is if we can get a 71 or early 70s Chevy, and then
that body style for sure. But if we could get the exact year, that'd be cool.
That would
feel like your old
make
truck.
it orange.
Too bad you don't have it still.
I know. It had a 6-inch lift and 35-inch tires. It was actually my grandpa's truck, and then we had bought it from him and just kind of went through it. It had a 350 in it.
Cool.
I don't remember if we did anything to the engine. I don't think we put a new carb on it or anything, but it definitely had the big tires. In Rigby, Idaho, and you go mudding, you go mud digging.
And those cars have personality too. I mean, anything, especially when it has a carb, you just get attached to them because they have a personality. They'll start one day and they don't the other day, and you have to like baby them and talk to them nice, and they start, and you start to get attached. Yeah. The worse they are, the more attached you get, and then the harder they are to get rid of.
They're so cool. I mean, it's cool to do this Tesla conversion and have electric, and driving a Tesla is fun. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just fun. But there's also something about that old muscle.
Yeah.
It's old engineering, but it's still the same nowadays. It's just fuel injected instead of a carburetor.
Yeah. It's hard to beat the sound and the smell of an old Chevy engine.
Yeah.
I mean, a Chevy is specifically a Chevy 350. Like, you can smell the exhaust has a certain smell to it. Like, it's just
so interesting.
After selling my Chevy, and then we had a Chevy Tahoe for a little while in '98 or something. But I'd be walking down the sidewalk and I smell an exhaust, like that was a Chevy, and I look back, it's a Chevy 350.
Really, I wonder what the science is there, like some ratio of oil to
burning oil.
Burning oil and
a lot of burning
gas.
Oil.
So with this Tesla conversion, what are we doing? What are you doing?
Yeah, so my plans, and part of why I think you were excited to talk to me on the podcast originally, was I wanted to make it a business. I've been exploring the idea of EV business for a long time, and being entrepreneurial. I was in a startup while I was in my undergrad. I joined a startup that was doing police body camera technology, and I actually before I graduated college, I got to be the inventor on a patent granted before I graduated, which was really cool, and helped me land a lot of jobs. They don't care about your GPA and your degree that much in the real world, which is why Acton is so cool. So I've been I got a taste of that startup feel and the excitement, and been wanting to do kind of entrepreneurial stuff. So the idea was, I went through a lot of iterations of what I could do with my skills and my interests in that kind of business. I know you talk about what's that funny word, the Iyagi?
Ikigai.
Yeah, I'm never going to remember that word. But it's that whole overlapping of what are you good at, what does the world need, and I don't know what else.
Yeah, what makes you money, and what you're good at, what the world needs, what makes you money, and what you're passionate about.
Yeah, what you're passionate about. So I know, like, the thing that keeps me, I view it as a disability almost. The engineer brain is kind of crazy. Like, Elon Musk says his mind is a storm. When he tries to think about like electric airplanes, like, his mind just explodes because it gets him caught up on things. Like, when I start planning an electric conversion, like, it keeps me awake. Like, I can be awake till 2 a.m. just like figuring stuff out in my head. Like, I could do this with this part, and I need a battery at this voltage. I could break the battery up and I should get a part from this car or this car, and like, I'm awake all night. Like, I can't sleep. And I'm sure some things you get passionate about like that too. Yeah. But I think a lot of people who don't care about cars have it better because they don't, like, I hear a noise in my car, and like, my brain goes crazy for hours. I'm thinking about how am I going to fix that? What is it? I actually can, like, mentally see into the part of the motor or the brakes or whatever squeaking or crunching or grinding. Like, I'm trying to process it. Whereas other people, like, it's making a noise, bring it to a mechanic. They save hours of time and stress just being ignorant.
It's cool, it's cool to see your mind, because we've been working on that airplane. And in my mind, I'm like, well, I just do what the instruction manual says. Mm-hmm. And then you come in and you kind of look at things and you're like, oh, it works like this, and you just have it in your mind, and you've worked through it somehow very quickly. I don't I don't know how to work things out like that in my mind.
It's cool to see how things are built. As a young child, I was obsessed with how things work. I bothered my parents crazy just asking, like from age 9 to 10, I'm asking my dad, how does a jet engine work? And I was in the garage trying to build a jet engine as a little kid. So like a lot of kids did video games. I did RC flight simulators, which actually the one I grew up with had a option where you could edit planes.
That's cool.
The airfoil, the motor, the thrust. And so I grew up doing that. And so that's why I wanted to be an aeronautical engineer was my dream.
Yeah.
But BYU, I didn't have that degree, and I didn't want to go to school in California where I grew up. So,
For sure.
so that died. But I've got to do some of that stuff at INL and other places. But that was my dream. Like that's what I wanted to do.
So you said you want to have experiences and do different things. But you've done a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, you've worked that nuclear stuff. I had no idea. You were trying to build a jet engine as a kid. You own a school. You have a sweet job. Like you get to. I don't know if we can talk about what you do. It's top,
no, not really.
Top secret. You get to do stuff there, and converting EV. Like it's really cool. I believe you're going to do great things.
Well, thanks. So I just got to stop being so broad. I got to focus my efforts on one thing at a time. And then I have 5 little kids.
Yeah.
And so my wife and I had kids pretty close together, and they are a blast, but they are time killers for sure. So, and
the one that has the Winnie the Pooh sweater. That is a great sweater. I wish they had one of those for an adult. I would wear it.
Yeah, we should find one and get it for you.
Yes.
Yeah, that's gone through all our kids. They've all used
that's the great part about multiple kids. Yeah, they get to wear each other's clothes.
Yeah, well, our kids are close enough that if we screw up, we're going to screw them all up at once. Like some people test out on their first kid or two, but we're going to screw them all up at once because they're so close.
Awesome.
But we're working on it.
How close are they?
They're all 14 months apart, except for the last one. It was 16 months, I think. Pretty sure.
That's awesome.
So with converting EV though, the goal was to earn some money while doing what I'm good at. I could go into a service where I convert cars for people, but that for me, like once I figure out on a car that's broken, once I figure out what's wrong and how to fix it, especially fix it the cheapest I can. I like doing ghetto stuff. I'm really not I wouldn't be a good airplane mechanic because I'm ghetto with how I do things.
Just do experiment.
But I should be a little more OCD about how I fix things sometimes. But I really like solving the problem. Like that's what excites me. I don't even want to watch YouTube how to do it. Like I want to start doing it. I will watch YouTube once I get stuck, but I want to figure it out. Once I figure it out, it's super boring to do it again. Okay. I don't really want to do it again. Yeah. So that's why with converting to electric, I want to figure out the build, and there's so much. The technology is growing so fast. The EVs that are ending up in the scrapyards are becoming more and more prevalent. The Leaf and the Volt. And now Teslas are showing up in the scrapyards, pretty common. Yeah. I mean, there's so many Teslas built. So repurposing OEM parts is the cheapest way to go. And there's a lot of people who don't have $50,000 budget for a really good conversion, which is what a good conversion would, like the base cost for most conversions. So repurposing OEM parts that are high quality parts for the cheapest that you can requires some fun engineering to make everything work together. The systems engineering, I like seeing things as a system and how to make them work together. So that's the exciting part for me. So the goal is to actually create courses while I figure it out, make a course, sell the courses online, save people a ton of time and money, show them how to buy the parts, show them how to put them together, how to make it work. There's a lot of good mechanics out there who are terrified of the electronics. Yeah. I became an electrical engineer partially because my dad kind of encouraged me. You have a very mechanical mind, but if you can just master some circuitry, wizardry stuff, you'd be a lot more useful in the world. And he was right. And I got into it, and I was good at it. So that's kind of the goal of converting EV. And then halfway through starting your Tesla project here, we've kind of hit a pause because we decided we had to start a school, and we had to start it now because our kids are growing up. So that's the other thing we're doing is the Acton Academy.
So really quick on the Tesla, and then let's move to the school. What are you doing on the Tesla? Like, what's it going to look like when it's finished?
So your Tesla, we were going to do. We bought the Tesla to use its parts. We were going to drop the battery, drop the motors, and buy some aftermarket controllers that could control it all, which would be really fun and really cool. And we were going to mount it all up to the frame of a truck. But we decided once we got for like $200, we got the Tesla working again. Replaced the pyro fuse that blows when the airbags go. We replaced that in the radiator and added some coolant, and it was working. Yeah. So we have a fully functioning Tesla. It'd be a shame to waste all that Tesla engineering, and we could save some money if we just chop the body all the way off and then do a body swap. We put a cab of something else on and keep the steering wheel. We're actually going to try to mount the cameras all back on, recalibrate them, and see if we can get some of the auto steer functioning back. But it'll still have the Tesla supercharger network will work, all the HVAC system, which is really good on the Model Y. Their heat pump is awesome. Okay. So to not have to buy that stuff from some other vendor and make it work would be hard. So we'll just keep all the Tesla stock, chop it all off, and put a body on. And some of that body work I'm not as experienced with, so you have a friend that's going to help us with some of that. But it's still going to be a cool project.
Which is so interesting to me. Same thing, like thinking through things. I look at it and I go, how's this going to work? How are we going to fill in the gaps and make this look all good? And he looks at it and he's like, it's not a problem.
Yeah, the body shop guys blow my mind. They're artists. I like solving problems. They like doing art. I mean, body shop people have a skill. They can sculpt with metal in a way that it takes a real skill.
So it'll be driving down the road and it's just going to look like a 71 Chevy.
With Tesla rims. I mean, you might need to change the wheels out if you want it to not be obvious, but...
No, I'm okay with it being obvious. No, I think it'll be really cool.
Yeah.
So it'll be driving down the road, and then you open up the door, and it is a Tesla interior.
Tesla interior. Well, we might have to change seats, but we'll see. See how it fits. Cool. But it'll be a Tesla dash, and it'll drive fast. We're going to add a controller in and give you the ability to do burnouts and donuts, and so I think that'll be a blast.
So are you building a course as you do this then? Yeah,
so the course is going to be... We're going to do Tesla. So for the Tesla courses, Tesla is the best stuff out there, right? So that's going to be the premium course. I have the budget course I've been doing a Toyota pickup truck conversion right now that uses a bunch of parts from Chevy Volt and Nissan Leaf all together. That's really budget, but it'll be a very competent freeway driving, fully modern technology, and it'll be cool. But I'll have that course that'll be kind of for budget with a budget price. But the Tesla one is going to be the premium course. We're going to cover all the ways you do a Tesla swap, which is body swap will be one of them.
Yeah.
And then I have a friend in Salt Lake that does Tesla swaps into old trucks where he builds the frame around the motor, and then we do aftermarket controllers. So I'm hoping I can, he said he would, he just got to make sure our time works out, but I'm going to go down sometime while he's doing a build, and we'll add some to the course. Cool. So when someone buys the Tesla course, it'll help them decide, should I do a body swap? Where do I buy the salvage car? What are some of the things to avoid? Because parts are hard. EV parts are pretty hard to come by unless you want to spend a lot of money.
And if it's wrecked to a certain extent, you lose Tesla support, correct?
Yes, yeah. I think it's once Tesla somehow they hear about a salvage title, you have a clean title on yours, because I don't know why it's still a clean title. Once it gets re-registered with a salvage title or somehow reported as a salvage title, they block it off the supercharger network. Okay. So that would be one of the things. But in some wrecks, the battery gets damaged, and there goes a really expensive part.
Yeah.
That you can't.
And that is the most
swap.
Expensive part of
by far. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The battery's the most expensive. And if we can just keep it all sealed and packaged the way Tesla did it, that saves a ton of time. So we're going to do that. But I do want to do some courses where we have Tesla modules out of the battery, and we're wiring up our own BMS, battery management system, and programming that. And we're going to have some course. And my budget course is going to be doing that. We're going to wire to every cell of the battery. We're putting wires to in our own controller to see what level all the battery's at and how to balance it and stuff. But for yours, the Tesla is just going to do all that Tesla does. Do it for us.
So it'd be managing weight, but technically, could you just add more cells in to get longer range? Yeah,
not to a stock Tesla, just because software-wise it'd be way too hard. But there's people who've done it with Nissan Leafs and Chevy Volts. They've doubled the battery packs.
Interesting.
So it takes some wizardry that's beyond me. Some
world.
of it.
No, I think it's great that you're in it. And you said that these companies are just continually coming out with new things and better technology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So even the Tesla, from what we got versus now. Mm-hmm. Very different.
Tesla upgrades and iterates their design very fast. A lot of car companies, they put out a model and they keep producing it for 5 years, and they'll make small tweaks. But Tesla, every few months, they're making changes to stuff. So it's hard to know what Tesla you have.
Yeah. I wonder how that works with manufacturing and how do you change all of that so fast?
And that's a lot of it is they're perfecting the manufacturing. They're bringing the production costs down is where a lot of it comes.
And that's where the changes are coming in.
Yeah.
And you
for
said
most of it.
The motors are different now?
They're I'm not sure what's in the Cybertruck, but I know they've announced a permanent magnetless, no magnets in the motor, which is what an AC motor is. Their first Teslas, the first models out were AC motors, but those produce a lot of heat. I can get all engineering on you, but they produce a lot of heat in the motor, which means you're wasting efficiency and energy, and you got to keep them cool. So then they go to permanent magnet motors, which is what the Nissan Leaf has, and those are the strongest out there. But permanent magnets are expensive, and rare earth elements they're hard to come by. So then they do a synchronous reluctance internal permanent magnet motor, which is the coolest thing out there.
Say that 10 times.
So yeah, SynRM is I think the synchronous reluctance motor. PM SynRM is the acronym. If you YouTube that, it's mind-blowing. It's a cool motor, and so that has less permanent magnet and more of a cool rotor design that generates no heat but has higher torque.
So by generating less heat too, you're probably more energy efficient.
Yeah, you waste less energy. And so but Tesla said in their last investor meeting or whatever that their next models are going to have no permanent magnets, which means they're going to be a pure synchronous reluctance motor, which is a little less torque than a permanent magnet one, but enough torque to be fast and be extremely good to the environment for rare earth elements and extremely cheap. So produced a lot cheaper. So the technology is changing really fast, and I love electric motors. They're bazillion times better than a gas motor as far as torque and performance. Batteries are the killer. But that's changing fast too.
Batteries are changing.
Yeah, I mean, semiconductor industry changes so fast, and the size, the amount of transistors they fit on a chip has shrunk a ton. I had a job offer from Micron as a NAND memory chip designer before I went to the Air Force. I almost ended up working for Micron as a semiconductor engineer. So I know a little bit about the semiconductor industry and how fast they change and how difficult the process is to produce semiconductor chips. It's hard, and it's really similar to what would go into a battery production. Except batteries are more heavy on some of the expensive elements. But I believe battery technology will progress similar speed as the semiconductor technology, which has blown up. It shrinks.
Are the semiconductors, are those the chips that they're having a tough time getting right now?
Yeah, semiconductor is any computer chip. Pretty much, yeah. And the semiconductors the production facilities are all based in China mostly. So that's what.
And a few are moving here, right?
Yeah, but they have On Semiconductors in Pocatello, and then Boise has the Micron. But full scale production, they tend to outsource. The engineering tends to be here, and I grew up near Intel where they do a lot of the engineering. So it's cool stuff. But
I got the email from Tesla I could buy a Cybertruck. I signed up for the the pre-buy 3-4 years ago. I'm like, dang it, it's the wrong time. I gotta finish an airplane. And they're a little pricier than they said they were originally going to be, but inflation,
they're cool.
Inflation's.
I binge watch YouTube videos of engineers tearing apart EV cars a lot, and the Cybertruck is one of the coolest builds out there. One of the best. I'm not in the automotive manufacturing industry really, but from what I can tell, the Cybertruck is a total revolutionary. Like how they did everything.
That's cool.
And they're the first 48 volt system in a car. Cars are all 12 volt.
Okay.
And just like high voltage power lines, when you bring the voltage up, you can drop the current down for the same power. So now all the wires that were, they could go 1/4 the diameter of wires throughout the whole car.
Yeah.
So the weight of the wires goes down, the cost of the wires goes down.
Interesting.
And there's a lot of wires in a car.
Especially nowadays.
And some people say electric cars have more wires, but I would argue that. Because if you've seen how many the wire harness for a gasoline engine,
that's true.
Holy cow, there's sensors everywhere.
Yeah.
An electric car has like 2 sensors in the motor. It has other sensors obviously, but electric motors are really simple. So
that's cool. I never thought about that. Yeah, because you've got fuel injection. Even looking at that airplane engine, which is a very simple engine. Yeah. There's wires everywhere.
Yeah.
How does this all get wired up? But it makes sense that on an electric car there would be less, and then it's just going through that battery management system, and then your controller, correct?
Yep. So and And for electric conversions, classic conversions, it's a lot less wiring than like an LS swap. If you do a V8 LS motor swap, like the wire harness is way simpler. So there's some mind-blowing stuff, but unless you're soldering leads for your entire battery, which I had to do for our Ford Courier truck, it was like 130 times 3. I had to solder like 400 things, and I did it all in one night, just soldering.
That truck was cool.
A lot of soldering.
That's a fun truck.
Yeah,
it
works.
You let me drive it once. It was awesome.
Yeah, it works great. It's a fun little truck. I can't drive it in the winter, though, because the battery's not heated.
Oh, okay.
So it sits.
It's interesting that even the Tesla with heated battery, the longevity definitely goes down in the winter.
Because it's got to heat the battery. Yeah,
okay.
It's keeping the battery warm on its own, and so that kills a lot of energy.
Okay.
But if it doesn't, it degrades your battery, and it's worth nothing. I mean, it'll ruin your battery pretty quick in 0-degree weather.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which is Rexburg.
It's definitely Rexburg. Not this year.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It's been nice.
And we were able to paint an airplane outside yesterday.
Yeah. Unless you want to go sledding,
December.
it's been really nice.
Yes, exactly. Our kids do want to go skiing, but
yeah.
So, what made you want to start a school? Not a lot of people in the world own a school.
Yeah. Well, now that everyone's bored of electric car talk,
I could keep doing it. I just looked at the time and I was like,
I could talk all day on electric cars, but another thing you talk all day on is education.
Yeah.
I mean, education is such a personal topic to everyone because everyone has kids, everyone has their own experience going through school, everyone has opinions about how we should be educated. And so there's a lot of rabbit holes you can go down, and there's some politically charged sides of education. I mean, politics plays a role in it. So we didn't set out to be a teacher. I actually didn't intend to ever start a school. Although I had something inside of me that from a really good professor I had at BYU Idaho, an engineering professor, that really put a bug in my head too, where I thought someday I might go into teaching or education somehow. He had been a lead engineer on a semiconductor industry, and he was he was a lead engineer on these chips that were producing, I think he said, this is what I'm paraphrasing what I remember. He said the chips he was producing were generating the company $1 million of revenue every month. So, like, he's a valuable engineer, and he's got a really good salary doing that. So, and he says, well, one day I decided to invest my time. He said, I want to engineer something that doesn't go obsolete in 2 years.
Yeah.
You know, a semiconductor chip is worthless in 2 to 3 years. You need a new laptop or a new whatever. Yeah. The new thing comes out. And so he said, well, I use these engineering skills on stuff that just goes obsolete. So he decided to be a teacher, and he went to BYU Idaho, and he invested in students, and he used engineering principles in how to help students reach their potential. And so that's where I thought, well, maybe as an engineer, I have something to offer the education world. I like seeing how things work and seeing where problems are and finding the answers to the problems. So that's where I think we had a bit of I had the willingness to take this kind of leap. But we started figuring out for our youngest, for our oldest, we said, well, should we educate our kids? Do we put them in public school? We're really glad we're not in California where my siblings are, because public school there is scary, right? Yeah. But as you pointed out to me before, even here, public school can be a little scary. Yeah. And then my wife started reading some of those influential education books, like Unschooling or the Thomas Jefferson Education or Sal Khan's The One World Schoolhouse. And we started really opening our eyes to what education is. One World or One Room? The One World Schoolhouse. One World, okay. Because Sal Khan is the Khan Academy creator, so cool. He's opening education up to the world. Yeah. Which is, he's probably done more for education to the world than anyone in history. Even in public school now, they're like, if you want to learn calculus, just go to this website. Yeah, Khan Academy. And it came out just in time for me in college. I didn't really have it in school. I wish I did. It was mind-blowing. They have... For math especially, it has everything: programming, finances, economics. Like, they have everything on Khan Academy for free, and it's good quality. But for math especially, it's tailored well for interactive learning, where you could teach yourself all the way up through the highest levels of calculus that you would learn in college for an engineering degree. For me, getting through my math classes in college, it was Khan Academy is what I went to. So it was mind-blowing. But his book on the One World Schoolhouse is also mind-blowing. Like, he points out a lot of stuff about how the current education system is built and why it's built the way it is, and how totally wrong it is for what our world is today.
Yeah.
It is not built for the modern world. It's to produce. The way it formed was really to produce obedient factory workers.
Yeah.
Like that's really what
Is it the Rockefellers?
yeah, it's got. And we have our the shift bells. We have rows of desks. We have just follow the rules. This is your standards. The state sets the standards. You meet the standards. We create curriculum to go to a standard. Who the heck decides what standards should be? You know.
Sure.
And I've worked for the government in some nuclear weapons and stuff, and I know the government can't be trusted with almost anything.
Yeah.
They try hard.
Yeah.
But it's just not set up to work. So Megan was the first one to be like, I don't think we can put them in public school. And I was like, we're in Rexburg. Like, I don't want them to miss out on Foursquare and friends and, doing art projects and stuff. In elementary schools throughout the country, but especially here, elementary schools are not that bad.
Yeah.
They do a lot of playtime. Kids need to play.
Yeah.
They need friends. They need to have their own experiences. But there's still some poisonous stuff that starts to happen in traditional schools, even at those young ages, where it's starting to crush curiosity. And we saw that with our daughter. She went to a public school for a little bit, and then we decided to try a local private school here that was good, and she learned to read really well. But there's the traditional style of teaching still was crushing her excitement about school. She was doing worksheets all day, and then we say, "What'd you learn in school?" And she didn't want to talk about it, and she wasn't coming home happy.
Yep.
And so we thought, well, our kids, if we put them in public school, they'll fit in fine. They'll be normal kids, but is that what we want them to be? Do we want them to be normal, or are they capable of more? And then we heard of Acton Academy, and as I dove into it, it started to hit all of the things that some of it I knew I wanted. Some of it was like, aha, like, oh, we need that. I've never thought of that idea before. So then I can talk about what some of those points were, but when we saw that, we're like, we need our kids to go to this school. Idaho Falls had an Acton Academy. They've been open for about 3 years. They just changed owners, and just to put a plug in for them too. The owners, they have two owners, two parents from the Acton Academy there. The owner was going to close the school, and two of the parents stepped in and said, "We'll buy it."
Cool.
And one of the parents I've worked with at projects at INL,
Yeah.
and she's one of the most brilliant cybersecurity power grid engineers our country has.
Yeah.
So, and she sees the value of, and I think her and I come from the same perspective of where we've seen some of the most technologically advanced threats that our country faces and the challenges our country face. And there is no way public school can produce the kind of people who we need to be innovative and problem solvers and decision makers on this stuff. The power grid is complex. The nuclear weapons complex. The threats we face with our adversaries is complex. And public school, it's a miracle I'm in the job I'm in, because public school is worthless. Yeah. I can't say it wasn't worthless, but it was worthless.
Yeah.
All of the things that made me, and I want to ask you this, like what made you capable of what you've accomplished? Is it your experiences in public school, or what is it? Because for me, it was Boy Scouts. It was the leaders that I sat around the campfire with, these men that inspired me. There's a roofer and a construction guy, a contractor. Like, I sat around with these men, and they inspired me. They're hard workers, and they taught me life lessons. And I pursued merit badges, and I pursued my interests, and I went camping and slept in the snow and did all that stuff. Like that changed me more than school changed me. Then I grew up on a small farm, which not everyone gets to do. Yeah. But I had farm responsibilities put as a higher priority than homework sometimes. I remember going to school. I was a good student, and I went to school, and a teacher asked me, he said, "Why didn't you do your homework? You always do your homework." And I had some project I just didn't do, and I had a legitimate excuse. Luckily, I said my sheep got out, and I was chasing sheep all day.
Yeah.
Like, I had to get the sheep back in the pen. They were running off on the neighbor's property. And I spent forever looking for these stupid sheep. Yeah. And luckily I had that kind of responsibility. But the teacher was wise enough to be like, "Oh, that's kind of cool. Like, okay," and he didn't care. You have a real responsibility, and that's what I wanted for our kids. Public schools and a lot of traditional schools, and a lot of adults and parents in general, are taking responsibility away from young people. And they want to create a nice, clean environment, learning environment, sometimes a safe environment, and it's taking away the messy decision-making and the responsibility that a young person can be trusted with. They're capable of crazy things, and I think that you think similarly. You have some bright kids. I see them go by themselves on their scooters past my house sometimes. Yeah. Like they're independent and they make decisions on their own. So I want to hear from you a little, like what impacted you the most in your teenage years? Was it school? Like were you public schooled?
Yeah, public school. I would say I wasn't really impacted until my mission, but it wasn't even so much my mission. It was my brother wrote me. They weren't cryptic letters, but he was kind of trying to help me be a good missionary, but not so much like bring people to the church good missionary, just become a good person.
Just be a good person.
Yeah, just be a good person. And so he would start sending me these things, what you think about, you bring about, and then the science behind it. And really, that's what got me set into this path. I figured I would go to college and become a dentist and, just get a good job and make all that work in that way, but
make some good dough. And,
exactly. Yeah. Then I found out, like most dentists are depressed, and a lot of them just hate their job and hate their life. And
shout out to the dentists that love their job, but exactly. But there are some. I know what you're talking about.
It would be difficult, and I mean, I think we're on the same page with the cost of college, and you take the cost benefit, and we're going to school to get a good job so that we can just pay back our school. It's a weird system, so. Kind of going down. I mean, all the books over there are, well, maybe not all of them, but monopolize your marketplace and just what you think about, you bring about books, and just started to read Think and Grow Rich and How to Win Friends and Influence People, and just know that life could be not what I was taught in public school. It doesn't have to be go to school, get a degree. Pay your taxes till you die. I mean, I guess never mind. Taxes you have to pay till you die.
Oh man!
But I that's a really good question. I've never thought about that. So,
well, I mean, these books you have like are the public school, traditional schools, and a lot of what our parents' generation and some of our generation are telling people, like you have to go to college, and then you get to college and you get a huge debt. I mean, everyone, I think, kind of agrees now. You get a huge debt. You go find a job, hopefully. I was lucky to be able to pay my way through college and graduate no debt and have a degree that did get a good job. Like I knew I had to get a degree that would get a job. And so I tried to pursue a degree that I was capable of that stretched me. But and some doctors and dentists and some degree engineers and that type of job, you need the degree.
Totally agree.
But but is that where you're learning? Like I didn't learn that much. What I learned from in college was my projects, like my internship and stuff. Stuff mattered because I was doing personal projects I cared about. And for you, you're doing these, like you read these books and your brother's giving you, challenging questions and challenging self-development type of stuff. Like that's where you learned from, right? So.
What's never resonated with me very well is generalized knowledge. So, Henry Ford. There's a story, I don't know if it's true, but someone had slandered him in a newspaper, and then he took him to court, and they were able to kind of debate it in court. And they asked him this crazy question about history, and he's like, I don't know, but if you come to my office, I have a panel with buttons. I mean, this is back in the day when, that was a big thing. I have buttons. And if I press one of 7 buttons, it will get somebody into my office that can answer your question. And when I heard that, I was like, we have the internet. We have encyclopedias. We have, I don't need to know all of this generalized knowledge. And I think Albert Einstein said, why would I essentially pollute my mind with generalized knowledge when it's going to take up space in my brain and I can be doing something specialized? And that really resonated with me because I don't need to know calculus for what I do right now.
Yeah, and I don't either. I'm an engineer, and one of my teachers literally said, so this is for RF signal or RF circuits or something. It's one of the hardest classes for electrical engineer. It's how to design circuits that are radio frequency circuits, how to make antennas, how to match impedance, crazy magical stuff with imaginary math stuff. They use those weird, I don't know. If you ever want to, your mind blown, just Google Smith chart on Google.
Smith chart.
I think a lot of the charts they label on the top black magic. It's this chart that you use for mathematical equations for RF circuits. And my teacher said, I'm forcing you to do this problem by hand with the math once because you have to for accreditation, but you will never do it again. and I'm sorry that you have to do it. You know, it took weeks for one problem. You know, it's ridiculous stuff. But you don't have to anymore, especially the world we're in now. So the schools are they push memorization and teaching to a test, where you cram it all in, you take a test, and then you forget it all. And I was good at that. I'm a good guesser on tests. Yeah. You know, public school taught me how to take tests. You know?
And there's an art to taking tests. Yeah. I mean, some people are really smart and really knowledgeable, and they do crappy on a test, and then other people that are not as knowledgeable, but they know, well, I know it's not this answer, and I know it's not this answer, so then that leaves me two answers, and this one sounds the best. So
I was really good at multiple guess tests. That's really, and in my public school upbringing in California, like history especially, I could literally just see through it and be like, well, what political lesson are they trying to teach with this historical question? Like, what do they want me to think about this historical event? And normally I would pick the most woke or whatever it be, and I circle that and I'm right. California. You know, and it was California, and I could see through it. And we were in a conservative county, but still, it was the state standards and the state textbooks and the state stuff, and it was very politically charged. So I could see through it so much that I didn't even have to study or do anything. I just say, what do they want me to think? And I circle it. You know, and so that testing world is so obsolete now, especially in the world of AI. Like, people are like, well, how do you freaking out? Our kids are going to write their essays with it. Well, why should kids have to write the traditional essay anyway? You know, whoever read those 5-paragraph format from, you know, here's my thesis statement, it produces really good, really good professors and people who can do publications and really high verbal intelligence, and they reward that. But there's so many smart kids out there that are not high verbal intelligence, who don't produce super good essays, who are extremely capable in the engineering world, in the art world, in the entrepreneurship world. Like, they can create stuff that didn't exist before. And then there's some people who can just produce research papers like crazy. And I see that at INL. There's some publishers who are publishing like crazy. And in my master's degree, there are lifelong professors who are obsessed with publishing, and they were never real engineers. Whereas at BYU Idaho, our professors were real engineers from industry, and I could see the difference. I'm like, well, some are useful and some are not. You know,
and I don't want to take anything away from education, because obviously, if someone has a degree, like I actually is as against public, higher education as I was myself. I don't want to take that away from anybody. So if someone does go out and get a degree, like, that's awesome.
That's true.
And good for them. And someone who can do calculus, good job, because I have no desire. And I do believe, like you said, doctors, lawyers, certain industries, absolutely, degree is great. But one thing I like that you said about the tests is you just kind of saw past it. What do they want me to think? Acton is very different. How is it very different?
Thanks for getting us back on track.
No, it's good.
I ramble. So Acton Academy, what I saw that I needed for my kids and why we had to start one, for me, there's different points that drive it home for a lot of different people. Some of the people who get into Acton, it catches them on fire. There's some stuff that people just get excited about. And this is one of those things that some of the people, when you learn about it, something will grab you and you'll just be like, wow. And for me, it's responsibility was the thing. It does not take responsibility away from students. And the way they do that is adults are never, ever allowed to answer a question in the classroom, which is mind-blowing. The adults do not lecture and do not answer questions. So the learners quickly figure out that the adults aren't going to help me anyway. Let me figure this out. And it is frustrating. So I've been acting as a part-time guide for our first half of the school year. So I'm in there with a bunch of 6 to 10-year-olds. And they actually found it kind of fun that they would try and catch me. They'd ask me correct questions and try and, are you going to answer it? But sometimes they'd be frustrated. And sometimes I'd be like, feel for them, because the answer, I didn't provide the resource for them to know the answer. So I'd have to say, I'm sorry. And then the next day I'll have it on a board or posted somewhere, but I have to provide the resources for them to go find their answers and give them the tools to go find their answers. So that's the first thing. It keeps responsibility on them for their education. They don't do traditional grades. They have badges that they work towards, like Boy Scouts. They pick their interests and they work towards these badges, and that's how they show what they've accomplished to the world. And we have times where they can be we call them exhibitions. At the end of each session, they'll do these quests where they have either experiences with either technology or history or something else, where it's an experience that they do as a group together in a tight-knit tribe, and then they have to present that to their parents and friends. And so that's kind of where the grades step in, because grades don't mean anything anymore. I mean, you can have an all-A student that is really struggling, but the teacher just won't give anything but A's, except for the kids that won't do anything and they get all F's. It doesn't mean squat anymore.
Yeah, so. And the world is probably run by C students. So.
It is. the ones who wanted to find shortcuts, because that's what the world needs, people finding better ways to do things. Yeah. And the traditional education system is just not a smart way of doing things. So the C students are the ones trying to get out of that.
And as long as those C students are adding value to the world and those shortcuts don't take away from anybody else, I say go for it.
Mm-hmm. This is a random story. I sat next to a girl from Slovakia in high school. She was an exchange student.
Yeah.
And I asked her, are we lazy? Because in Eastern Europe, I mean, they were a little more intense on their education. And she says, as politely as she could with her accent, she says, "You're not lazy. You just look for shortcuts." And I was like, that is the American spirit, you just look for shortcuts. So there's also something about Acton that was kind of a divine pattern for me that I felt like matched the way. I'm still kind of processing this in my head, but it matches the way that our Father in heaven, I know some of your listeners aren't religious, but many of them in our area really are. And so for me, faith is a big part of what encourages me to do things. And Acton Academy is not religious, but it's religious freedom. So we never suppress religious discussion. Yeah. And the guides don't teach, so you don't have to worry about a guide indoctrinating. But it's the students have discussions, deep discussions, and the religion can come up based on their own convictions. But for me, I have a faith that God wants us to become the best that we can be. And He is not here telling us what to do. He gives us heroes and stories of heroes that we can embody, and we put ourselves in their story. And Acton has, the hero's journey is huge. It's how you motivate the learners to be who they can be. You tell them, look, you are giving freedom to pursue what you want to pursue. Here's some tools. Here's some of the skills that we think you'll need, but it's up to you to become who you need to be. And you can make a difference in the world. You tell them every day that you can find a calling in the world and make a difference. And then we read stories of heroes. We read about Albert Einstein and Helen Keller. We read these little stories that talk about these heroes even at a young age. What did Albert Einstein do when he was a kid? He did not fit in school. Yeah. He was not a good student. So he couldn't spell, things like that. So they learn about these heroes, and they start to see themselves in these stories. And that's what God's done. He gives us stories, He gives us heroes, and then He gives us freedom to learn through experiences. And He doesn't tell us everything to do. And He also gives us covenants. And Acton is a covenant-bound school. The learners make the rules. The first 3 weeks we had, we made it as it was a game, but they created their studio contract that they live by and they enforce on each other. The adult doesn't ever step in and say, "Hey, stop goofing off. Yeah. Hey, focus. Hey, do that." The adults don't do that. They're responsible, and it's really hard as an adult to be in the room. If things fall apart, we step back and let it fall apart more, and it's amazing that if I just wait, they self-correct 90% of the time. Sometimes they don't. Yeah. And we talk about that. Which is
akin to life, right? Yeah. Like most of the time we self-correct, but sometimes we don't.
Yeah, it's messy, but they make their own contracts, they make their own rules, they enforce the rules on each other. When something comes up, like they have no rule to clean the studio. Yeah. They didn't make a rule to clean their studio. They have to clean it. I don't pick up a thing. Yeah. And so it gets really, really messy, and eventually they'll have to figure out. Hey, they take turns doing different parts of the studio, but as one starts to goof off and never clean, pretty soon I think they'll be making a rule about cleaning the studio. So because they can't enforce it on them because it's not part of their promises that they made with each other. Yeah. So it's contract bound. The guide signs a contract, the parents sign a contract, and everyone lives by the contracts. And if there's any problems, we refer back to the contracts. This is what we promise to live by. And so to me, that's a pattern, a defined pattern too. God teaches us through experiences. He lets us fail. He lets us learn from our failures, and he is not here all the time telling us what to do. And that's what I wanted for my schooling for my kids. At a public school where it takes responsibility away, even the responsibility to pay attention. Like the teacher, an adult is always telling them to pay attention. Yeah. And so they don't have to think about, well, should I or should I not be focusing right now? They can just let someone else tell them.
They'll be told to.
So what's funny is we did a challenge. So we're a pretty STEM-focused school too, just because that's the skills I have, and I'm trying to let them figure out if that's something they can do. So we do challenges, life skill challenges, like we changed the front brakes on a car. Yeah. And I didn't help. Yeah. I put all the tools out. We pulled the car in. I sent them a link to a YouTube video of how to change the brakes on that car, and they went into there and did it. And I just observed to make sure safety was happening. I had to ask them, is that where a jack stand should go? And I did have to suggest, well, maybe it should be over here. I don't want anyone getting crushed, but the rest of it they did, and 2 or 3 of them. They didn't get to use the wrench to take the tire off, so they were kind of bored already, and they walk off and start goofing off. And I'm like, they're missing it. I want to tell them to focus. It was killing me. They're just goofing off. 2 of them needed help, and we're trying to do it. And so I'm like, I trust the system. I trust them. I'm going to leave. And the jack was set. Everything was safe. I left the room. Yeah. And as soon as I left, they start yelling, "Hey guys, we got to get this done by 11. She's coming to get her car. Come help!" And the ones who were goofing off, they saw I wasn't there, and then they're like, "I guess we should help." They went in and they started helping. Yeah. They were waiting for me to boss them around to tell them to focus. But when I left, they just did it. So if you give trust to them and you get out of the way, they can accomplish things. But if you keep telling them what to do all the time, it makes them resentful. It makes them feel like they're bad at stuff. I mean, if you keep telling them to move on to the next math lesson because you got an 80, good enough, move on. Mm-hmm. We've got holes. They think they're bad at math for the rest of they have one bad year, one bad teacher in math early on, and they think they're bad at math forever because you need all of it. In calculus, you need all of it. When I screwed up in calculus, it was because of my algebra was weak. It wasn't the calculus. It was earlier.
That's so interesting. It just makes so much sense, and I love that autonomy that's being given to them, and then that they have to learn on their own. I mean, that's life too. Even going to college and you show up and you get your degree and you go, well, what do I do now? I have to pay back student loans, but I don't have a job. Well, we weren't given the tools to figure it out. Yeah. Like you're giving them tools at a young age to just figure it out.
Mm-hmm. And it's their responsibility. They may not get as far through math as they would in public school. Normally they excel at, once they hit middle school age and they know how to focus and they know how to find their own lessons. They know they're motivated by badges and their running partners and their goals. They excel most Actons 2 to 3 grade levels per year. But at elementary school age, they may not excel as fast as public school. I am not standing over their shoulder telling them to focus on their math and pushing them. But whatever they accomplish, it's theirs. Like no one else made them do it. They accomplished it. It's kind of like, I don't know if you did Boy Scouts much, but I did become an Eagle Scout, and I had a lot of friends that were Eagle Scouts. And the joke is, Mom earns the Eagle Scout, right? Because she made you do it all, and she prepared
before you're 18.
Yeah, she prepared your binder. She did it all. She called all the counselors. Like a lot of moms have earned a lot of Eagle Scout badges. Yeah. So they may not become an Eagle Scout with an Acton-style mentality, but what they do become, it's theirs. If they become tenderfoot or first class or whatever, it's theirs. They own it. They own the success. So the Acton teachers, it's hard as a teacher because you want to invest your soul into people and you want to take credit when they succeed. And when they fail, you feel responsible for it. But Acton owners, we have to step back and say, well, it's not our success and it's not our failure. So we have to try not to feel the hurt when we let them fail. Yeah. And it's hard. I watch, my daughter was the youngest one in our studio, and she, socially, she hangs out with toddlers all day. Yeah. So socially, she kind of acts like a toddler sometimes, and that's kind of annoying when you're a 10-year-old boy. So we have two 10-year-old boys and 8-year-old boys that, she was bugging them. Yeah. And they started to let her know. Yeah. And I'm standing as dad, I'm watching them, yelling at her and telling her to do this or that, and she's doesn't understand, and she's starting to, tear up, and I'm like, stay out of it, And then we come to the circle each day, and everyone gets to talk, and I ask questions, and I don't. And I just ask them hard questions and let them talk, and I try to, help everyone learn to have a say. But they process it, and it has changed our daughter faster socially than I could have imagined. Like, she's matured so much.
That's cool.
And they learn how to, the mixed age. So Acton's about mixed age too. So the mixed age is so big, and that's what the world is. Nowhere else are you smashed in by age. Traditional schools smashing them all by age and saying, well, you all have to be the same level is totally dumb, because nobody learns at the same rate of different things. Some excel at math and some excel at this. Just let them excel at what they excel at, and let them teach the younger ones, and let the younger ones ask for help from the older ones, and they learn so much faster and grow socially so much faster. They have to be leaders, and they admire each other, and they help each other, and that's been really cool to watch.
How do the subjects work? So we've talked about math, but what other subjects are there, and how are those approached?
So core skills. So a typical day is we start off with a Socratic launch. Socratic teaching is where you ask questions only. Yeah. Hard questions that normally don't have a real answer, and it has to matter to them. And so they start to learn to articulate and discuss deeply right off the bat. So 15 minutes every morning we'll do a Socratic discussion. A quick example of that is, we've had a lot of fun, deep discussions. It's crazy what a 6 to 10-year-olds can come up with in their answers and their thoughts. But on December 7th, this month, that's Pearl Harbor was December 7th, 1941. And so on December 7th, I showed a clip of real footage of Pearl Harbor for a second. Yeah. And they saw that, and they learned about that history for a minute. And then I said, now let's imagine this. You are the Vice President of the United States. The President of the United States during this war just passes away. Yeah. And you're now president. And you find out the secret that your country has 2 nuclear bombs. Do you end the war and kill all these people here, and save the lives of how many? Do you use 1 bomb, 2 bombs? And we kind of lay out the situation, and they have to make a decision. Yeah. Acton is all about, in their discussions, they have to pick a side. In public school, I learned really well to look at both viewpoints, but I never learned to make a decision and move on, act on it. Yeah. And the world is missing that. Just act on it. Make a decision and move forward. Entrepreneurship is that way. You got to act and move forward. You may not know everything, but just make a decision and explain why, and then move forward. And so they have to make a decision, and they have to explain why, and then they have to disagree with each other and argue with each other in a civilized way. And so they learn how to do that. So we do that. So that's the morning launch. We do that morning, sometimes right after lunch, and then a closing group where that's kind of similar style, but normally kind of reflecting. And then we have core skills time, which is where they all get their computers. We set them up on all these different softwares that are adaptive learning, where they don't need teachers to give them lectures. Khan Academy has it all on there. They can pause it, they can fast forward, and it's adaptive. So when they're good at it, it lets them move on. If they're bad at it, it gives them more exercises. And we have that for reading and writing and math. And then we have history. We do experience-based. We'll read stories, and then we'll do experiences based on that. So we could go in on some of the stories, but we just finished Acton Athens Quest, where they got to relive some history of ancient Greece and learn about ancient Greece, and they had to make a yo-yo and make an abacus math calculator thing and learn how to use it, and learn about some of the Greek philosophers and have Socratic discussions on Greek philosophy topics and stuff. And and
they earned coins, right?
Yeah, they earned coins. And I think I told you one of our launches, our Socratic launches, it mattered to them because they all had coins. They're excited that day. They're about to spend their coins on a banquet, for a Greek banquet. And so some of them had a lot of coins and some had a few coins. And I said, so here's our discussion today. I said, imagine this. You have to pay taxes. And I said, how many do you all have? And I took the ones who had the most. I said, I'm going to take 30% of your coins. Yeah. And they were upset. Yeah. And then I gave some to the lowest, the one who had the least coins. Yeah. And I didn't tell them what to think about taxes. I just said, is that fair? And they discussed it and argued about it. And I said, so now let's imagine that this one who had no coins, he was disabled, and he couldn't earn as many coins as you because he's disabled. Yeah. So is that fair now?
Yeah.
Like, should I be the one to take it from you? Should you give it to him? Should you all have the same coins? And they had some thoughts, and they've argued about it, and they discussed it. And I didn't tell them what the right answer was. It's not my place to know what the right answer is, but they have some thoughts about it now, and it's personal.
What are their thoughts?
They had some varying thoughts. Obviously, if the one who had less coins kind of wanted to be given coins. Yeah. So and the ones who earned the coins are like, no, I'm keeping those. So they kind of stayed based on their distribution is kind of what their opinions were, which is kind of what real world happens, right? Yeah. So that was kind of fun to watch.
That's cool. You just get like a whole bunch of anecdotal evidence for the world all day long, like micro.
It's a mini world. It's their sacred space, and it's supposed to be where they are free to act and let real consequences happen. So it is a micro of the world.
Yeah.
and it turns into Lord of the Flies sometimes. but there's order. They learn lessons and they're figuring it out. So it's been really fun.
And you give them like book assignments? Like, do they have to read anything?
Yeah. So they do the core skills time. They have their computer work. They work through those programs, and then we'll often have some free time, and then we'll do a DEAR, drop everything and read. We don't care what books they read. As long as they are loving it. They have to, comic books or whatever it is that they are into, they get into it and they read these books, and they get this time that they start to really enjoy. They sit on the beanbag and they have a little hanging swing and stuff, and they sit wherever they want and they read. And for 30 minutes, not every day, about 3 times a week. Yeah. And they start to love that. Ideally they progress through all the books we have, and then we're going to start putting some of the deep classical books on the shelf. We're not going to force them to read it. Yeah. I was forced to read a lot of classical books in public school that I resented. Yeah. And I didn't learn the lessons I should have, because for some reason Lord of the Flies was one of those great books I had to read. And I'm like, why the heck am I reading this? This is violent. It isn't. And so so we're not forcing him to read any of those, but we'll have them on the shelf. And one of the boys is a fast reader. He's been cranking out the Harry Potter series, cool. and so we'll have some of those deeper books there for them, and they'll hopefully learn to read through that on their own. Yeah. And then they have badges for books. They can do kind of book reports where they have to pick a great book, a book that's influenced the world somehow, and explain why it influenced the world and what lessons they learned, and that's how they earn their book badge. So that's another way of kind of getting them to think about their books and articulate to their peers about why that book matters to the world. So, and we have a list of great books, or they just have to pitch one that they claim has either won an award or influenced the world somehow. Yeah. So that's the reading, and then after lunch they have just group quests. And the quests, starting in January, we're doing robotics and programming, where cool. They have challenges that they have to do on their own. The adults don't help, but I have to set it all up for them. I have to have everything there for them, but otherwise they have to do it on their own.
That's so cool.
And they take off with it. Like, I just showed them Tinkercad. It's a kid-based 3D CAD modeling software. I just showed it to them and got their account on their computer, and they just do it. Like, they have a 3D printer in the studio. They've been printing Christmas ornaments and stuff. Like, they just love doing that. And then Tinkercad now has circuit design and modeling and programming as kind of game-based. So they're going to be doing some of that. So you don't need teachers anymore, and they need to learn how to use AI to change the world. They need to learn how to use the internet to change the world. Some parents are scared about computer safety and internet so much that they hide their kids from it until they're 18, and then they're at college, have to have a computer all day. For sure. It's better to let them fail at age 6 to 10 when their interests are a little more innocent. Yeah. Let them learn internet safety and computer habits now. Yeah. And so it's very, it's Montessori based, where it's learner driven, but Montessori tends to be a little more anti-computer and heavy in books. Okay. Some might do more computer, but it adapts. Acton Academy really pulls from all the influential education stuff out there. They pulled all the best things they could. The people who founded it really, they have found a system for everything. Every problem, they have a good system to make it a learner-driven environment where they can learn without adults having to do it.
So as of right now in Rexburg, it's elementary age?
Yeah, 6 to 10. It's just, we really want the middle school as soon as we can.
For sure.
All the best benefits are middle school, high school age that I'm excited about. They do real internships from age 11. And they start a business almost every year. They have to start their own business as one of the quests. And so, that's I'm excited about that
that's
phase.
amazing.
But it's just too hard to transition from public school at that age. So we can't really build our middle school from public school students.
Yeah.
We have to build the elementary school. It's just easier for at that age to be learner driven. Once you've been trained in the public school world, it's just really hard adjustment. So, which a lot of the homeschool community understands that too. When you switch to homeschool during middle school, like that's just hard. That switch is hard.
Yeah.
So,
are there Acton high schools?
Yeah, there are a lot of Actons that have made it up to high school, and the way a lot of them, they don't come to school very much because they're doing internships.
Yeah.
They finish all the high school curriculum, like math and stuff. They normally finish with it either by middle school or early high school. And so luckily here in Rexburg, BYUI offers college. They let high schoolers enroll in BYUI. Oh, okay. So we'll when we get to high school, they'll be able to do that. They'll be doing internships, but we're not sure what it's going to look like yet. But we'll have it when our learners are that age. We'll have it. So, but a lot of the other Actons, they don't take credit for the success of the students. So it's really hard to know how they perform, but I've seen speeches and stuff from some of the graduates, and I've seen how articulate they are, and I've heard some of their experiences talking about how shocking it is as an Acton student when they first go to college and they meet their peers in college and like they're incapable of making decisions. And they're like, well, how come all these people from public school can't make a decision?
Yeah.
They can't articulate, they can't think. Like it's just So a lot of Acton graduates just go into business. They go into entrepreneurship.
I was going to ask how the transition was from high school to college, but I mean, you just answered it. It's probably easier. Yeah,
and getting into college, the badge system, we have a way of converting that to a traditional transcript.
Okay.
So it's pass-fail. I mean, we do mastery based, so they don't move on in math. We don't care what grade level they're at, but they don't move on till they master it. So, and same with the writing and English, the grammar stuff, like they don't move on until they mastered it. So they'll pass everything and just some go faster than others, and that's just how people are.
Yeah.
So
we have a neighbor and a friend who they do homeschooling, but there's really no curriculum. Mm-hmm. And when I first heard that, I was like, wait, that makes no sense. Like you're not even teaching your kids anything?
Yeah.
And they're like, no, our kids learn what they need to learn when they need to learn it in life. And I just didn't understand that for a while.
It's mind-blowing, yeah.
As we've been around for a few years and got to know them, and their kids are really good friends with our kids, like these kids, they're good kids, and they're smart. Mm-hmm. And they all read, and they all do the things they're supposed to, but that's that specialized knowledge. They know what they're passionate about, and they go after it. It's really cool.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, who decides what curriculum is? Why? Yeah. Why? History is important, but does the state need to decide which history is important? Why can't you just go to the library, and find what you're interested about?
What history is real?
Yeah, Go find what you're interested in, and public school. Well, some traditional schools, there's good teachers. And they're trying really hard, but the system is just not set up well for them. And they're not set up for success a lot of times. It's really hard to be an influential teacher when you're forced to teach to a test. You're forced to meet these standards. And you can't let your classroom break down and learn social things because the principal's going to walk in any minute. You don't want to look bad when your class is chaos. So they're trying. There's some really good teachers, and I've been influenced by really good teachers. But here's a funny story. So I was a bit of a weird kid. So like third grade, me and my friend Jordan, we found out that there's this one really long slide that at our playground, this long plastic slide that if we would go down really slow on our backs, we could get a really good electric shock at the end. Yeah. You could really shock someone. And for some reason I understood, but probably because we had a trampoline or something, but I understood ground, that if I touched ground, the potential energy would leave. So I was like, we got to keep our feet up and then you shock them. And so we were doing that a bunch, and then we're like, hey, Kayla, this girl with really long hair, we're like, go down really slow and see if we get more static electricity. So she'd go down slow and her hair would stand straight up, and then she'd shock us and go, it's really fun. Then I had this idea. I don't know if it's embarrassing or proud of the fact that I know this was all me. I said, let's get a chain of people holding hands to the fence post. There was a metal fence like 10 feet away. So we all held hands to the fence, and then she would go down and she'd shock us, and every person in the row would feel it. They'd all, and jump. And it was mind-blowing to all of us that we could feel it, Yeah. And I had a watch. I still remember I had a digital watch, and I had her touch the watch, and I was at the end of the chain, and the watch was broken. It was wonky.
Interesting.
The digits were all messed up, and I was proud of it. I was like, look at I went home, Mom, I got electrocuted. Look. But what was interesting is the teacher that was on duty on the playground saw we were attracting a crowd because everyone screamed when they get shocked. So we were attracting a crowd. She came over and she made us stop. Like that's what's wrong.
Yeah.
Something's different. Stop it.
Yeah.
Where she could have asked questions like, I mean, I don't know if a kid's ever died from electric shock on a slide. I don't think there was a safety issue.
Yeah.
But could we have learned something about potential energy and static electricity and conductivity, the metal fence post and stuff? Like we could have learned something, but she made us stop. Like that is what's wrong. Go with what trust young people to be interested in what they're interested in. They have a calling, like they're interested in something. I was easily identifiable as an engineer as a kid, but not everyone's that easy to tell what they're interested in. You got to help them have experiences, and public school's not giving them very many experiences. I mean, they get some, but shop classes are being taken out of school. Yeah. Like a lot of those experiences just aren't there. And so, I mean, you guys, with your kids, you give them a lot of time. They're in a school that ends early, and they have time after school to find their interests, and you guys give them a lot of trust to do that. But
that's definitely not traditional.
Yeah.
So I thought of two things when we were talking. So one is how many kids go to college thinking that they want to do a degree, and then they switch it.
It's not the degree. Yeah.
It ends up a 4-year degree ends up 6 years, and then they still leave not happy, not doing what they want to do.
Yeah.
So that's a really cool part about Acton. And then the other thing I was thinking was a little while back, class sizes. So that is such a hot topic with public school. Well, the class size is too big, the student-to-teacher ratio. In your learning system or Acton's learning system, that doesn't matter because the kids are teaching themselves.
Yeah, well, and we're backwards, man. The more adults, the worse.
Yeah.
The more adults are involved, the more you screw it up. So, yeah, it's backwards. We kind of follow Montessori, where 36 students in a room is enough. We wouldn't let more than 36 in our elementary studio, and we'd open another elementary studio and kind of split it up. But the more adults involved, the worse it is. Assuming that you get some good sheepdog learners, the ones who want to take leadership, as long as you have some that are doing a good job at that, the adults will mess it up. Every time they'll mess it up.
And all you have to do is look at the world. It's all the adults making the bad decisions.
Yeah, you can trust young people to do a lot more. I mean, and like the Air Force, we have 18, 19-year-olds sitting at the controls of these ICBM nuclear weapons. Yep. We have 18, 19-year-olds running aircraft carriers. Like the average age is under 20 on these ships.
And the LDS Church, you look at missionaries, and you're like, how have young people not just screwed everything up? And you're like, well, it's because they're actually pretty good.
It's the first principles thing. So Elon Musk talks about this. So when you start a business, you can approach it with first principles or with I think he calls it story or something. He calls it something else. But you can do what other people do. You can model after something, or you can just look at the basic principles and build from that. And that's what Acton is. Acton is a first principles approach at education. And young people like young missionaries, 18, 19, they have first principles because they don't know what other people would do. They don't know anything. So they just look at what they learn and they shape it from what they have. But when you're building a school, you could do what everyone else does, or you could just say, well, this is the truth. Trust and being able to trust a young person with responsibility, give them freedom, give them some scaffolding, some guardrails, and then get out of the way and let them choose what they can be. And that's so different, but it's based on truths that I believe are truths that would really change the world. So right at the beginning of our school year, I know we need to wrap up on time here pretty soon, but right at the beginning of our school year, I was acting as the guide full time for a little bit, and I was taking a break from INL. I still am at INL part time because they need me for some projects still. But we had a report, a classified report due at work that was about our country's drone strike program. I was one of the lead analysts on doing infrastructure security analysis of the power grid wise of all the infrastructure that supports our worldwide drone operations, which was some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
But I had to leave our studio, Megan had to come in, find a babysitter and come in and act as the guide for the students. And so I had to leave the studio, drive into work. I go through these 3 layers of doors to get into a top secret vault, and I'm sitting by myself in this vault working on a classified report that goes to the Pentagon.
Yeah.
And I have this aha moment. I'm like, what has more impact on the world? By far not this report. It sounds important. The Pentagon's going to get it. 1 or 2 people are going to read it.
Yeah.
All right, there might be some dollar bills going back and forth. Like the report might justify some Congress spending on something that they need. Like it could have an impact. And all the jobs I've had, I've tried to pursue things that have an impact that matter. But as I think about it, like that does not matter compared to these young people. Like they're the future. Our world needs more heroes like that, you know. Like we could have a lot of average people who keep doing dumb things. They don't know history. They don't know how to make decisions. And it'll be the same or worse as it is. You know, the world is so complex. We need people who can think complex and make decisions. Yeah. And so that's like these young people, that was more important. And so I'm sitting in this annoying, awful vault space trying to write this report that's extremely boring. And I'm like, this is kind of lame. I should be back there. Like that's where I should be. So that's for me. Hope my boss doesn't hear that.
Yeah. if your boss is listening, you do, you know.
I'm still needed at INL to some degree, and I do see some contribution there. But as far as importance, I'll be clear that I do believe the education of my kids and the young people, helping them be the heroes they need to be, is more important by far. And that's why we made these risks. I mean, it's been a huge financial investment and time investment for us. Like we don't have other sponsors, and we're not getting state money. Yeah. We're not a charter school, because if we did, we'd have to teach to the test. Yep. And we don't want that. So, and luckily in Idaho, we still have enough freedom to do what we want with educating young people. Like we're pretty free here. Yeah. So that's nice.
I don't want to like get off on a tangent, but is Acton allowed in like liberal or in like California?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and there's quite a few in California. Because it's very much they think what you want to think. You know, let them become who they want to become, and that's on both sides of the spectrum. Cool. So, and we had a cohort when we started Acton. We got trained by Jeff and Laura Sandifer, the ones who founded Acton, and they're really inspiring people. Jeff started Acton University. I'm not sure what he calls it, but it's an MBA program, Acton MBA, and it's the most rigorous in the nation, and it's all based on Socratic teaching. And he is just a brilliant businessman and entrepreneur. And so Acton is kind of founded on this entrepreneurial spirit. But they trained us for 2 days, and in our cohort of other people starting Actons, it's a really good network. It's awesome because it's kind of a decentralized network. It's not like a franchise where they tell us what to do. We have a few core principles that we have to follow to be true Acton, and then we all share as owners. We share the launches and the quests, and we all help develop the curriculum, the challenges and stuff. But we had some in our cohort that were in California who are definitely not conservative, and the types of Socratic questions that they're asking are very about, you know, how would you. It was teaching lessons about race and stuff that is a big point for their political views. But the way they're asking questions lets truth come out no matter what side you're on. Like everyone on all sides of the spectrum, you have core values that matter, and we all share those core values. It's just we disagree on if government should be the ones in charge of it or not. Right. So that's where it comes down to. Like, we're just not sure the government's capable of doing that or not, or you want government to have more power or less power. So
they're not capable.
You and I agree either.
You said it's decentralized, so really Acton is the Bitcoin of education.
Yeah, I mean there is Acton, Maine is the one in Texas, the first one, and that's run and operated by Jeff and Laura, and they ensure quality among the name. Cool. So they own the name. That's great. And so they do some quality checking, and we owe them a certain percentage of our profits each year, but we don't pay. And besides that, we had to pay for some training and some initial stuff, but otherwise we're free to kind of do what we want as long as guides don't answer questions. And we have to have, you know, a camera in our studio with a live feed for them to check quality, and that's about it. Like that's all they care about. Cool. So we have a lot of freedom with it, and the good thing is the studio's run by the learners, so every Acton's different. So,
well, good job doing what you're doing. Like that's, like you said, it's a risk, and it's a financial risk, and it's kind of a life risk, but you're doing it for such a good purpose, and with your kids in mind and wanting them to have that hero's journey. Just good job.
Well, thanks.
It's really, really cool. How would someone sign up to Acton?
Yeah, so our website has a lot of resources. ActonRexburg.org has the application process on there. The application, we call it an audition. All the Actons call it an audition process because it's more of a learning process. If you get through the audition, you're a good candidate, really. Because it teaches you. We don't want people signing up for it who don't know what they're getting into, because we're not going to tell you how your kid's doing and what grade level they're at. We're going to let you ask them because they're responsible. Yeah. So it's hard, and it's not a good fit for everyone. There are some learners it just is not a good style for them. They need to be told what to do. They need more structure. But if you go on there, there's a lot of videos and interviews. It's gotten pretty big, like Jeff and Laura. Well, Jeff was interviewed by Jordan Peterson recently, and another Acton owner.
Which was a great podcast.
Yeah. So that one's on our website, along with another Acton owner. I think it's the one in Boise. It's a good one, but I think it's the Boise one. But I don't know. One of the other Acton owners was also interviewed by Jordan Peterson. And there's some other good resources there on our website, but. So in the application process, first we'll just ask you a few questions to see if you're a good fit, and then we'll give you some homework where you'll learn about what Acton really means, because the parents sign a contract too. They have to be on a hero's journey too. A lot of the parents get inspired by the way that Megan and I did. This changed us when we started. When we apply to start an Acton is actually hard, and for us to be qualified to start an Acton, we had to do some learning and changing and start our hero's journey. And we felt like we had to start the school because that's where we felt like we had to go. Yeah. And so the parents will be on their hero's journey. They'll have to do some reading and a few videos. It's like, you can do it in a week. It's not that crazy of stuff, but you have to learn a little bit, and then we'll meet with you and have you in our studio, and we'd love to have as many as we can. Really cool. So 6 to 10 right now. We'll have 11-year-olds in our studio and maybe 12-year-olds before we start the middle school. But we're really trying to accept for 6 to 10. We don't do 6 is normally when someone can read. We really look for some core reading skills because you've got to be able to do your online programs. A lot of Actons do a Spark Studio, which is an preschool. Okay. The Idaho Falls one has a preschool. We don't really want to start a preschool yet because that's a lot to take on right now. Yeah. And the Madison Montessori, Breezy, the bidders, you have the bidders in here on your podcast and stuff. They're doing up to kindergarten with Montessori, and Acton preschool is basically a Montessori. Cool. It's learner driven, and so they're. If you're looking for this kind of education and you have a preschool age, look at them. We got a ton of interest for preschoolers. Yeah. But we also got a ton of interest for 11 to 15 boys. There is something going on in our public school where parents are dissatisfied for their 11 to 15-year-old boys. I think they are not getting enough responsibility. Yeah. Like, these boys are capable of some huge stuff. And I see them at, amusement. We were down at Lagoon, and I saw a bunch of, just hooligan, awful teenage boys going, being disrespectful and annoying. Like, they should be out working. They're big. They're men. They're big guys. Totally. They should have responsibilities that matter to them. They should be, traditionally they'd be farming or whatever it is, but our society needs a lot more for them. And so we've gotten a lot of interest from parents for 11 to 15 boys. And so if you have a STEM-minded child, and boy or girl, who's pretty STEM focused, we're looking at starting a STEM program, a just STEM program that's kind of outside of Acton but still in our studio, where they'll be choosing their own projects, and I'll be leading it as like a project manager, systems engineer standpoint. They'll do a resume quality project that they get to choose and build in a team. Yeah. And so they'll be either building a drone or an electric go-kart or something that they'll pitch, and they'll have to pitch to their parents and explain it and go through the whole engineering process. So we're going to start that once we have enough students to make it worth the time. I don't want to get I'm excited about that. I don't want to get too distracted by it though. Yeah. But if you have a STEM-minded student, you can also send us an email. I'm Brian at ActonRexburg.org. And we're setting up. We have about 5 learners that are kind of into that. And those learners may transition into our full-time middle school because it's going to be an Acton style STEM education, and they may learn the Acton way enough to be accepted into our middle school at that age. Hopefully we can get a few sheepdogs in there to help set the culture.
Well, if you're going to build an electric go-kart, I want to be a guide.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, and guides don't have to be experts at anything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're experts at a lot of stuff, but as far as education, like, you don't have to know anything. You just have to know how to ask some good questions and make sure they don't kill each other. Yeah. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks for today.
Yeah,
that
thank you.
Really good chat. Honestly, like, I keep looking at the time, but just because I want to keep talking. So,
well, I don't even know how long we've been, but I'm sure it's been a long one.
Yeah, but that's good.
Well, we could go on forever. I mean, education's a deep topic.
Yeah.
So. Well,
let's do it again, and then next time let's dive deeper into educate. Well, let's give an update. So we'll give an update on the Tesla, the airplane, and then just a little deeper dive into education. And
cool.
I'll do some studying first. I'll read those books that you said.
Okay.
And
cool. Courage to Grow. Courage to Grow is the book. That's written by Laura Sandifer, the founder of Acton. If anyone reads that book and they're like, then Acton's not for them. If they read that book and they're on fire, then they make a great candidate. So that's really the decider. If someone can get through that book and you agree with how it all was set up and the struggles they went through, Acton's not perfect. It's not a utopia. It's not clean. Yeah. It's messy. The world's messy. So,
yeah. And then what was the one by Khan Academy guy?
Sal Khan did the One World Schoolhouse.
One World Schoolhouse.
It was pretty that one. I got into that book. I didn't think I would get into it as I did. Yeah. And then
was that some of your required reading for?
No, that one's not required. Okay. We have a list of books. So the parents, in their contract, they're supposed to be on a hero's journey, and some parents agree to read a book a year or something about these things, because we want our parents to be good models to their learners and to our society, our community, about what an Acton family is. And so these books are encouraged. But Courage to Grow is part of the application process, and it's on Audible, so you can listen to it. But yeah, and then Thomas Jefferson Education is really changing the way a lot of homeschool co-ops work and a lot of education. It's pretty awesome. So that's worth looking at. And the Unschooling is another homeschool revolutionary book. There's quite a few though. I feel like there's some more, but those are some of the ones that come to my mind right now that are pretty mind blowing. And I think you and Kira, you do a lot of those strategies. I mean, I can see in your kids. Seems like you're doing a good job. So
thank you.
I don't know your kids that well, but the interactions I've had, your oldest talks like an adult. You know,
they are good kids. He got like I wouldn't say a trial by fire, but we managed apartments, and for the first few years of his life, he would just do it with us. So if we're going to go do apartment checks, he came with us. And
that's how people, like 200 years ago, that's how families worked. Like you worked with your dad in the field, or in the trade. And one of Megan and I's goals since we got married was to have a business that our kids could work with us.
Cool.
And because I grew up with that on the Christmas tree farm and stuff, like I worked with my parents.
Yeah. And it sounds like your dad did a good job with like that truck, for example.
Yeah. Well, and
just, here's a truck when you're 12, 14.
Yeah, I was 13 and we had 20 acres to drive it on. So I rebuilt the go-kart engine and some other stuff. And luckily, my dad recognized my skills enough to know that I would be good at these things. I mean, it's hard for some people. My sister didn't know what she's good at or what she was interested in, and my family was so anti-arts that she thought it was a joke to major in art. So she majored in biology. She loves science and stuff, but now she's an artist. She figured out when she's older, this is what I love. So. And
nowadays it's so easy to just let kids go ham on an iPad that I don't know if we'll ever find their interest.
Yeah.
It's really tough. So.
Yeah. Well, my dad was so busy in my teenage years. He had church responsibilities and work responsibilities where he was just gone. For my brother, he was there more. My brother's 6 years older than me, but my brother went on a mission. My dad got called to a really heavy, intensive calling. He was in a stake presidency for 9 years through my teenage years, so he was just gone. So I maintained the farm equipment and the old cars. I had 4 sisters that all needed cars that worked, and so I was good enough at it. My dad trusted me to just figure out problems. The mower, the Cub Cadet broke for the tree farm. I had to get on forums, find the electric schematics, figure out it was an electrical problem. I learned every single inch of that mower, and that mower is still running on the farm 15 years later. So, it's the main mower still because it's the biggest horse. They don't make them like they used to. So, that's the way learning works: is let them go.
Yeah. Have you heard of Philo T. Farnsworth? He's the guy who invented the television.
That's in Rigby?
Yeah, in Rigby.
Yeah.
So when you just said that story, it just reminded me, when he was 12, how old were you when you rebuilt the mower?
The mower, that was probably 13 or 14, yeah.
So when he was 12, the family farm electric generator broke. And they had an electrician coming and working on it, but I don't know if they ran out of money or what it was. But he said, Dad, I can fix it. And the whole family's like, no, you can't. There's no way. But I think they ran out of options and he had to do it. So he fixes it at 12, finds this big love for electricity. And by the time he was 14, he had built a makeshift studio in their attic so that he could study electronics. And he would wake up at 4 a.m. because he worked on a farm, or, the family farm. So at 5 a.m. they're doing chores. So he'd wake up at 4 and just study electronics. And then at 5, he'd go and do his family chores. And then one time he's out on the farm, he's with a team of horses cultivating a cornfield. And he looks out and sees the corn rows, and he goes, oh, that's how a television works. Then he invents television.
Something, yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I believe engineering, like another deep end, I should save a lot of this for another podcast or something. I believe, so your passion and your interest is a calling to you, and I believe you get revelation for that. For me, engineering is a revelatory experience. Like, I have answers come to me that are beyond me. And I can see it when I'm in the flow. Like, I can't stop doing it. Like, I'm awake all night. Like, I'm getting revelation. Like, and I know not everyone sees engineering that way. They just don't have that passion. But everyone has a passion, and every learner that comes in our studio has something that they can be like that. And so it's nice to, when you kind of know what it is. Although I'm a elementary school guide, so I don't know. It's the problem solving I like, the challenge. But it's interesting. Yeah,
that stuff does go deep, because even it brings me back what you just said, and Philo T. Farnsworth. What revelation or consciousness or vibration level was he on that he's working on stuff at such a young age that big time scientists were working on in China and back east, but they had no communication with each other. They couldn't communicate it. They couldn't be like, hey, Philo, what did you figure out today? But they're all working on a TV at the same exact time. Yeah. And you're like, there's a bigger picture.
Yeah, it's not coincidences. Technology progresses at a rate for a reason, and discoveries happen in different parts of the world.
At the same time, almost like string theory is a real thing. Entanglement is real.
Yeah,
it's cool. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Let's make number 2 happen in a couple months here. And
that'd be awesome.
Hey, thanks. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.